All right, welcome to another episode of Learning Stories. This is an audio and video show where we interview a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. On each episode of this show, we interview a guest who has a story to share about how they acquired a set of skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative manner. In the process, we hope to uncover a new understanding of learning as conceptualized, imagined, and narrated by the guest in our show. Today's episode is really special because it's the first time I have another Abhishek on the show. So it's going to be Abhishek talking to Abhishek. I don't think this has ever been done in the history of podcasting, or if it has been done, it's going to be done better today. So, Abhishek Singh, my namesake, is a product manager and writer. He was born and raised in Ghaziabad. He followed the sacred Indian life path, school, engineering, MBA. Thankfully, somewhere along the way, he also stumbled upon writing. He has been writing for over 10 plus years, sometimes regularly, sometimes like a surprise cameo in a sitcom. But since joining Substack in August 2024, he's been more consistent, sharing humorous pieces that make people chuckle and occasionally short laugh. His newsletter, Another Blog, captures light-hearted, non-productive, and gluten-free thoughts on just about everything life throws at him. I first came across Abhishek's work on Substack, which I am quite happy about. I really enjoy his writing. I think his slice of life observations and things that he writes about really gets me thinking about the world in a different way. And I don't think often at the end of most of his pieces, I'm just laughing or, thinking about something in my environment in a different way. So he's got this lightness to him, but he also has an entire career as a product manager. So in this interview, I'd like to explore both these facets of his life and look at how different things shape people in different ways. So, Abhishek, thank you for making time for this. I wanted to start this interview off, and the first question was about Ghaziabad. What was it like growing up in Ghaziabad? Tell me about Abhishek at school and what were some of the things Abhishek liked growing up?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me, and it's always a pleasure. And the conversations are very very interesting when you have it with another Abhishek. So, like you said, it's gonna be interesting, and thank you so much for the kind words in the introduction. So, Ghaziabad, I think if people would recall Ghaziabad right now, would be it's a place near to Delhi, and it's a running joke that people who live in Ghaziabad, if you ask them what's the city, they will probably say that hey, we live in Delhi. But then when you further question them, they'll be like, no, it's a place which is near to Delhi. But thankfully, I never had this problem. I always very proudly say I'm from Ghaziabad because this is what my identity is. So I think growing up, I was not this talented, I would say, or I had never pursued so many things apart from studies. So I think most of my time used to go into studying, regular wake up, go to school, come back, study, play around, sleep. So this was all about it. And even if you ask any of the school friends of mine, I think they would say the same that this guy only studied, there was nothing more. And I completely agree. So, yeah, I think schooling for me was not very eventful, just me studying and passing the time around. That's it.
Hmm. And like, were there, because I know when I read some of your writing, Abhishek, I noticed that did you enjoy like comics and music and other things, that growing up in India, because I assume you grew up like in the 90s and early 2000s. So, like, what was that like? What were you observing about the world or the country around you at that time?
Cool. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point because comics have been a big, big part of my childhood. And I think I was first introduced to comic world through my uncle who used to take me and my elder brother to a nearby bookstore, and then they had that lending comics wala system. So you would go there, you would rent out a comic for a rupee or two for a week, I think now. It's pretty cheap if you think of it now, but then that I think used to be a pretty decent price. So there I was introduced to the Desi Indian comics. I think there are a bunch of them. Like I think the famous one is Raj Comics, which has Super Commando Dhruv, Nagraj, Doga, and my all-time favorite Bankelal. So then there was Manoj Comics and Diamond Comics, and then Chata Chaudhry's and whatnot. So I think my summer vacations used to be about reading those Champak, Nandan, these comics. So I think a large part of I think how I try to write in a comedy way. I think some of it I think comes from there because like my favorite comic is Bankelal, and he is I think the funniest comic that I have ever read. Uh, Again, I think so. Comics were a big part. I did not, uh, start reading novels as such. I think the first time I picked up a novel was in when I was in 11th. So up until then, it was just about any random book or comic which I could get my hands on. It could be Reader's Digest or maybe simply Champak Nandan or any other comic. But then I think with two states in 11th class, I think I was formally introduced to the world of English novels. So yeah, I think from there, I think it started off with Indian authors first, and then I slowly, increased my horizon to other authors as well. So I think reading was again a big part.
That's really fascinating, Abhishek. And I feel like Chetan Bhagat was also like somebody whose work actually got me into reading early on too. And I honestly feel that everyone has their own journey to, and whatever book you read, if it brings you joy, that's the purpose, And I don't think there's high literature, low literature. I feel like that entire like categorization is just so silly because at the end of the day, stories just have to give you delight and joy, right? And whatever form you read it, I think it has to bring that sort of joy to you. Like I remember reading a lot of Tinkle, like as you were, saying that. I think for me, Tinkle was my primary comic. I didn't get into, you know, the whole Marvel series, but and some of the stories that you said as well, I feel like I wasn't exposed to that as much too. So it's interesting to see how somebody can read the same genre and also have, different influences as well. What about movies, Abhishek? Was there like any movie you remember distinctly that pops up? Was it Bollywood, Hollywood? What were some of your influences there?
For movies, I don't think there were any comedy influences as such, but I do remember us getting a VCR player, and then we used to again that I think was the time where you could rent out things because buying stuff was very expensive, and then Indians were slowly getting introduced to those Western media, right? So we would again rent out movies, and I think one of the movies which I very fondly remember is Lagan because it was a very lengthy movie. So it came with a three CD set, and the third part was completely the cricket match. So I think what I would do is I would just directly play the third part and then watch that over and over again. I think would come back from school maybe while eating, I would just watch it. So this I think is one of the movies I clearly remember that you know I don't know how many times I watched it, but it was way above the normal. This is what I recall. But I think movies, again, it was just limited to having a cable TV. So whatever came up then, I think you would just watch it with the family. So nothing special there. Don't think there were many multiplexes then. I think when I was around like 10th or 11th, again, around that time, the multiplexes started coming up. So then we got introduced to, okay, fine, there are like different movies. There were some Hollywood movies also, and but major part of it, I think, the so-called experiencing movie in a theater, I think that came much later. I think in my college years, but before that it was just me, my family, and the prime time. So that used that made up most of it.
Interesting. Yeah, and like in your introduction, when I was reading it, you also mentioned following that sacred Indian life path. And I was thinking about this because I think most of us at that time were encouraged to take up, a certain path. And I feel like engineering was one of the preferred careers, and most people were preparing for their IITJs and going down that path. So, like at that time in school, and your, once you entered eighth, ninth, 10th standard, what was it? What was your world like? Did you know you always wanted to be an engineer? Uh, I'm just curious about Abhishek in high school and what happened at that time.
Cool. So in terms of careers, I think even I started with, I don't know, like how every kid starts with, I want to be a pilot because it fascinates a lot. But then you're very small, you don't know anything about how you become one, or what are the challenges involved. But I think For the longest time, I had this obsession for becoming a car designer. I still love cars, bikes. I mean, I we have a group with friends, I think, where we discuss this all day long. So I, for the longest time, wanted to be one. But then when I was, I think, nearing my high school, I did realize that the skills required, I didn't have those. Right. So that idea kind of dropped. But then what I realized was that if I had to be near cars, mechanical engineering makes the most sense. However, later my friends told me that it's not. The ones who did it, they were like, it is much more broader. It's not like you, from day one, you get to work around automobiles. It's not the case. So I think this engineering was always an option for me because it meant that I could be near automobiles. So I think choice for choosing engineering was not very tough for me. It rather came naturally because my father is again an engineer. My elder brother is also an engineer. So I was around engineers, and then the discussions that those guys were having, I mean, that felt okay to me. I mean, there was no repulsion of any kind. And then I would agree that there were not many options, I would say. The obvious ones are choosing either medicine or engineering, or maybe uh, there were some lawyers around me, but I never got interested. So I think engineering came in as a natural choice. So for that, I think again everyone takes up science in ninth and 10th, and then once you move to 11th, you start preparing for JEE. And then I think I also did the same. Uh, Went for the coaching, appeared for JEE, and I think that time I think we used to have IEEE and a host of exams, like separate exam for bits, and so I appeared for quite a lot of them, and then ended up in IP University.
Yeah, and like I think that period can be quite intense, right? Preparing for these exams and like, navigating that path as well. Like, there are two questions I have. Firstly, about some of those discussions with your dad and your brother. Like, do you have any distinct memories of things they would tell you about what they were doing on the job that sort of stayed with you early on?
Yeah, so my father used to work with ancillary companies, companies which used to make parts for the automotive lines.
Hmm.
So I think he used to work for one of the companies, if I recall. They used to make headlights and door locks for, I think, Maruti and a bunch of other companies also. So his stories used to revolve around some new model is coming up, because then these were the people who were supposed to make parts for them. So that conversation was always interesting to me, because when I had that natural inclination towards automobiles, and then to get that sort of an insider information, that was, I mean, it meant so, like, it used to be so cool to me that my father can tell me stories about how cars are made, and then what goes in. And then he used to bring us, I think, at times, those dummy keys. Uh, so I think I used to have a car key for, I think, Mercedes. So I think that was the closest I've ever come to owning a Mercedes so far. So again, like, very fascinating for a kid who likes cars, and then his father works in the exact same system,
Yeah.
and then his stories are around, how they manufactured this, how did it this, how the new car is coming up. And I think even my elder brother, even with him, it used to be similar, because then we were kind of on the same, you can say, similar age group. So we had same fascinations that, hey, one day we'll own that red Ferrari. So we used to talk about that a lot. So yeah, I think the way my father used to teach us, not teach, I mean, tell us stories. So that again helped a lot. And then again, if you get to hear things around the stuff which you love, I think it automatically generates a lot of interest. So engineering, again, I think, was easy enough, I would say safe enough choice for me.
Hmm. Like,
So no one pressured as such, but it was just my natural inclination, and everyone supported. Yeah, okay. I mean, if this is what you want to do, go ahead.
yeah, and I think that's quite interesting to know because I feel like different people have different stories leading up to a career. Like in university, so you went to GB Pant Government Engineering College. And I
Yeah.
noticed like you mentioned you also liked quizzing and some of these other activities. So like, what is life like in an engineering college for someone that knows nothing about it? Like going to an engineering college in India, what were some of the things you noticed about life there?
So I think the biggest part till this day, I think if I were to say is having good people around you, because then that makes the whole difference. I think more or less studying engineering or maybe any other course that you take up, I think academics is more or less similar. There is no major difference. But I think the friends that you make for those 4 years or however long is a course, I think that makes the whole difference. So I was lucky enough that I found a bunch of people who were on the same wavelength as me, saw the same stuff, thought about the same things, and then they had larger aspirations. So I think I had the best time in my engineering college because that was the first time I was out, like away from my home. Not, I was not living in a hostel. I was a day scholar. But then again, the time I spent in Delhi, I explored Delhi for the first time, and learned a lot of different stuff from these people because again they also came from different backgrounds. Someone had a father who was a professor, someone had an internship in DRDO. So lots of experiences with these people. And I think more than academics, I could relate more to the stories. I mean, we all created together in exploring Delhi, exploring all the good eating options there are in Chandni Chowk or other places, and then studying together before exams, helping each other, in clearing concepts, and then even right before going for an exam, you are essentially, teaching each other, hey, learn this, learn that, this is important. And then even in classes, I think it was a government college, so I think the professors there were sorry. So again, yeah, it was a government college, so we had, I think, a bit more freedom compared to the private colleges, because I have seen private colleges having sorts of uniforms and very strict timetable that you have to be in classes from as early as 9 up until 5. For us, it used to be a bit more flexible because I think our classes used to run up until I think 3 or 4. If we have lab, then I think maybe the whole day. But then we, I think, had more free time in our schedule compared to other folks, and that is why we were able to, explore a lot. So some of my friends were into singing, so we all used to go to their jamming sessions, and then wherever they got chance to perform. And then you mentioned quizzing, so that was again because of my friends, because they used to quiz a lot in their schools. And then we had this idea that maybe if we set up something around this, that we help other schools and maybe colleges organize quizzes. So we started off with organizing quizzes in our own college fest. Then we also tried, I think, once or twice in other schools, but then this idea never picked up the way we wanted to. But then it always remained as, I think we still have that page on Facebook by the name Cuisine. So it used to be active up until a few years back, where I think one of my friends used to put up questions there, and then you could go and answer that. So quizzing again, I was not someone who was very passionate about it, but then my friends were, and then it just caught up.
Like, and sometimes the people around you can also influence what you are curious about and what you're interested
Yeah.
in, right? And like, what degree did you get at the end of that period, Abhishek?
So it was a bachelor's of technology, BTech.
And was that like in computer science and in
That
mechanics?
was in computer science, yes. So could not get mechanical because of my rank and then how tough the process is. But my second closest bet was computer science, and I was glad enough that I could get into that.
Computer science is great, because I know I've spoken to some friends over here that said getting computer science was the hardest, and they had to choose other colleges because they couldn't do
Yeah.
computer science. And, because I feel like it's one of the preferred sort of branches. But this thing you said about Delhi, I want to know more about Delhi. So I'm from Bombay, like born and I mean, like grew up sort of here. And I have so much to say about what Bombay is like. And I feel like people in Delhi think certain things about Bombay. People in Bombay think certain things about Delhi. So tell me about Delhi from, the perspective of someone that went to college there. And not just Delhi, but, the extended Delhi area. But tell me what are your thoughts about Delhi as a city in general?
I would like to start off with the very typical comparison between Mumbai and Delhi because I have been fortunate enough to visit both.
Yeah.
I have lived on and off in Delhi for a long time, and I think I've visited Mumbai just twice or thrice. So this comparison again comes from the fact that my exposure to both the cities has been very different.
Yeah.
But one very, I think, basic difference which I can think of is how food is in both the cities, right? I'm not saying which city is better. Obviously, it's Delhi, so no debate. Uh, but if you look at the food that is, normally consumed in Mumbai,
Yeah.
it's something that you can eat along the way. You know, grab one vada pav or two, and then go towards your work there, come back, and even for lunch, and I think for that evening way back, people just opt for it, right? You have poha, which again can be, it's very light, you can consume it very quickly and then go. For Delhi, when you think of typical breakfast, it's a heavy diet, right?
Mhm.
Chole bhature is amazing, aloo puri, chole puri. And then again, these are the things which you have to sit, relish, and then you think of something else. You cannot just, grab it and then go towards your work. But I think in terms of food, I have explored more in Delhi. So I think Chandni Chowk, everyone has heard of it. You go there, pick any random shop you can think of, any random shop. Just go there and eat what they're serving. You will not regret it. It's that good. So I think in terms of food, definitely it is there, and I think there is some sense, some difference in the way you feel about a city. So when I was traveling to Mumbai, so I lived in Pune for 2.5 years, and when I visited Mumbai for the first time, I could see everyone is rushing. I used to think that this is just something which people say and it does not mean anything, but it actually is. You know, everyone is in a rush. I don't know where they want to go. Everyone is running.
Yeah.
Delhi feels, at least to me, a bit more warm. People would disagree because of a number of cases, but I mean, you have that emotional connect with the city. So I always feel Delhi to be a bit more relaxed than Mumbai. There are, I think, more, not around the number, but there are more historical places which you can visit. So you can always find some or the other historical monument near to wherever you are in Delhi. So you soak up all that history, you eat that good food. People love hosting you. I mean, that is, I think, what Delhi is for me. Lots of history, lots of stories, and then you always have good food to enjoy that. And then again, maybe because I spent the best years of one's life, my college life in Delhi, so I think that also help me explore the city in a much more relaxed way. Like there is no deadline to exploring that part of the city. It was
Yeah.
always like on a weekend you would go with your friends. There is no timeline, or like you have to visit it in those stipulated 2 or 3 hours. We're
Yeah.
just chilling and then enjoying the whole bit. So that is there, and for I think the nearby areas, as I think they are all clubbed into that common term, Delhi NCR. NCR is National Capital Region. In that, I think my home city, Ghaziabad, Noida, Faridabad, Gurgaon, I think they all come in. So these are developed more as an area where people could go out and work, and Delhi kind of decongests to some extent. But I think now the whole area is congested because again the employment opportunities are huge, and then people do come in. But I think in terms of the food culture and the historical aspect, Delhi again is like miles apart. You cannot compare Delhi with any of the cities. Sure, they do have their own cultures, mini cultures, but I think the dominant one is what Delhi has. So it's more or less very, very similar.
Mm. And like I think what you also said, Abhishek, that where at what point in your life you are in a particular city also shapes your perspective of it. And I think college is that time where you are really shaping your identity of sorts, and doing it in like, a particular city also makes that city a very core part of, your identity. And I think that happened, like a lot of the things you were saying, I was able to relate to, but in like a Bombay context. And I think that's
Yeah.
like it's like this is like a Bombay Delhi podcast now. It's not just Abhishek podcast, but it's interesting, right? Because now when I speak to someone that lives in Bengaluru, they have their own benefits of a particular city, and I'm just speaking about the big large metros in India. I feel like there are benefits of living in every city in this country, and there's something unique about it. Like, I think there are lots of flaws of living in big metros too, like, which is
Mm.
not very easy to see, like traffic, air pollution.
Yeah.
All of these things are things you face in like stark contrast. Also, just the density of people. And I completely agree with that thing about Bombay. Like, if you're standing on the road and you're not going somewhere, someone will come and take you and put you in an auto here and take you with them. You know, that's like, I feel like people get irritated if you just stand and do nothing. Like, you're just looking. I feel like that would be like a character over here. But I think it depends how you interact with the city as well. I find Mumbai quite like creatively interesting, just because it's like the cultural sort of hub. At least for the theater scene is quite nice, movie scene
Mm.
is quite interesting, literature is also quite good, and those are parts of the city that I engage with consistently. Not everyone engages with, so maybe those are parts that magnify for me. So I when you were speaking about Delhi, I was like, wow, it would be so amazing to be around all these historical monuments and that food culture. I've been to Delhi a couple of times and I love it, so it was good to hear that from you. Now, after engineering, you moved into the big transition path of doing management, and you studied at IIM Sirmaur. Am I saying that right? How do you?
Sirmaur. Sirmaur.
Sirmaur. Sirmaur. So this is like the Indian Institute of Management, one of the premier institutes. I know we
Yeah.
have a lot of IIMs in the country. So tell me how you got into an IIM and what was your experience at this particular IIM, and not why any other IIM too.
So I think when I got into engineering, I wanted to pursue like more into the engineering field. I wanted to do MTech and not MBA because I think I had this complex around speaking in English and then being around English speaking folks. And at that point of time, I always used to think that MBA is all about networking. It is to some extent. And then, meeting people, if you get into sales, it's all about meeting people. It's nothing else that you're doing. You're pitching to people. So I think that used to be that at least appeared to me as a very daunting task. So in the beginning, I used to be, no, I'm happy with MTech. But then with time, slowly, I realized that I think MTech, I I don't know, like at some point of time, I kind of realized that MTech is not the best for me because maybe I'm not that academically inclined now. So at that point of time, I think again, when I say that I did that typical path, I took that typical path. This is what I mean. You take up school, then you do BTech because I think almost every guy in India has done BTech, and then you take up MBA. So I think this was not a choice that I took voluntarily. It was more of I didn't want to do MTech, and then I think now the logical second step was to do MBA. So again, I prepared for it when I was in my third year of engineering, took coaching, and then cracked CAT. So I converted, I think, three or four colleges towards the end. But this one was purely, and this was the nearest to my place. So I think that's why I took up Sirmaur. And mine was the second batch. So Sirmaur started in 2015. In 2016, I got into it. So ours was the second batch. So I think the experience there, I think it was like being in a startup in some ways because the college was also growing with you. We had the mentorship of IIM Lucknow at that point of time. So the faculty, the administration, IIM Lucknow used to take care of it because we were building things for Sirmor. So I think it takes quite a bit of time to, get the faculty onboarded, the administration staff, so that, you can run the college on your own. But then I think that was a big boon for us because we were in Sirmaur but were taught by faculty from Lucknow. So again, I think when you go to such premier colleges, I think the biggest uh, experience there or the best experience there is from the faculty. They come from such varied background, such rich background, and then the knowledge that they're able to impart to you. I think that is just like so good. I think for BTech, I think the first thing I remember is always the friends and the people I interacted with. For MBA, it's the faculty. I think the things they taught us in those 2 years, because MBA is not your regular course where you just cram things up and then, dish it out in the exams. It's more about experiential learning. You are debating with each other on case studies. You study cases for certain subjects, and then you discuss them. So there is no absolute answer in most of the courses there. It's always a discussion that, hey, so I think one very good case or interesting case for me, at least at that point of time, was so this case was about the Parle company trying to decide if they wanted to increase the cost of that 4 rupee Parle G biscuit pack, or they wanted to keep it same because the costs were increasing. So again, a very simple thing, but then if you look into the financials and then other stuff which the company was going through, this might not look like the easiest solution. So we would then debate. I think people are there from different backgrounds. Someone is from the commerce, someone is from different courses. Most of them are from engineering because again, that's what the most of the youngsters do. So, but again, I think learning with different people from different parts of India again, uh, amazing experience. I think we had a batch of 35, but then we practically covered the whole of India. Someone from the northeast, someone from southern states, someone from up north, western part, eastern part. I think we had it all in those 35 folks. So again, learning, again, this was the first time I was living with people from different parts of India. So learning about the cultures. We used to celebrate every festival from which I think the people were there from. So for the first time, I saw how Ganesh Chaturthi is celebrated. I saw it very closely while in Pune, but then the first glimpse was in Sirmaur. And Sirmaur, again, the place where our college was, it was in a tier 3 town, Ponta Sahib. Uh, there, I think for the first time, I saw that how clean the Yamuna is, because in Delhi it's very polluted. Now I think there are efforts to clean, but that was the first time I could see that okay, Yamuna is clean also. So again, a very quiet town. Almost everyone knows everyone there, and you have one small market near the bus stand. Everything that you need is gonna be there, and then people know you that okay, these are the kids from that good college. They don't know what I am or IIM is or what that stands for, but they're very they know that hey, this is something different because people just come in from different parts of the country. So our faculty used to come from Lucknow, so there was always people going in, coming, and going in, coming out from that college. So it used to be we were the kids who everyone almost knew after a year that these are the kids from that good college, and so again, like a very different experience having lived in a tier one city, and having done my college from Delhi, moving to that quiet part of India. I think that was very very different. I think for the first time we had access to clean air, good views, hills around us. Monsoon used to be very very different. Landscapes were amazing. You could go to Dehradun or nearby places just to explore during your time off. So again, like that was very very interesting.
Mhm. And like, was there a particular branch you specialized in? Sheikh, like you did computer science in BTech, like in this one.
Mhm. So
Or
again, in MBA, first year is the same for all. You study everything. You study I think every course that there is. So marketing, finance, HR, strategy. You study something from each of these streams, and then there is no specialization as such. At least in IIMs, so you are free to choose any subject from any of the disciplines. But for my case, I think most of them were from marketing and operations.
got it. And like that's nice to know. And like, for someone that's just starting off in the engineering path and that wants to pursue an MBA, like after you graduated in 2018, I know you've been working in a couple of different companies since then for the last six years or more.
Mhm.
Primarily in the role of like a product manager. And you started off at a much like an assistant product manager, and then you worked as a product manager in like the Android space, and for two different companies in like the revenue management for Airbnb rentals and like an online B2B marketplace. So like I was looking at your career graph and at least this early part of it, Abhishek. Like when you graduated your MBA, did you have clear ideas about what you wanted your career to be, at least in the first 5 to 10 years? You want, because with your background in like computer science and BTech, and then an MBA with marketing and operations. Is there like a clear streamlined path for someone with that background? or how did you decide that journey for yourself?
So I think there are a number of options available for anyone, and then it again depends on what type of roles that are available at that point of time, and then which companies are visiting, and then if again both the interests align, yours as well as the companies, right? But for my case, I think I got lucky because I was primarily looking for some role in which I could use both the computer science as well as my management learnings. And thankfully, I think I got this role of product management, but frankly, I knew nothing about the role. uh, Only when the offer was made and the company came to our campus, I did some research and then realized, okay, this is a really interesting space to be in. So again, like lucky enough to get into the space, and then while on the job, I learned whatever I've learned so far. So there was no pre-training that I took, because this role, or I don't know, this role did not exist as such, at least in the college space, that you could, have a course on product management. Maybe now they have added, but at that point of time, we did not have it. But again, everything I learned was completely on the job.
like in terms of the companies that you worked in, like, is there a difference working in like a smaller sort of organization but fewer people, or like a startup and like a MNC, which is something that may have more structures and processes in place? Like, do you feel like there's a very different path for people going down each line?
Yes, so I think my first company there is, I think that was India Mart, and that company started in when there was this IT boom in India. I think
Yeah.
the first time internet came in, this is one of the companies which started way back in, I think, 1996 or 97. I think, I'm not completely sure on when they started, but this is like one of the pioneers of IT in India. So I think this company again has, when I got in, I was again at the lowest rank in terms of product management, because there, that is where someone who is a complete fresher starts. So for, I think there they had a lot of the things already sorted out, because when the company is again more than 20 years old, they have figured out quite a lot of the different things which someone would face. So there
Hmm.
was, you know, processes were laid out, and then you had to first learn about all of those, how things work, because this was my first job. And I think at least what I felt was getting into a big company kind of helps you ease, with ease you can actually learn how things work in corporate, how things are done, how you would take up initiatives, how would you go about doing things. So that was helpful. But then again, there are folks who prefer being in a system which has, more things which they can create and then work around. So if you start up, if you start in a startup in any way, and if you have a knack for it, then I think it's again not a, I would say, bad space. It again depends on how you want to start.
Hmm.
So in a company which is very small, you can actually do things in a much more faster way,
Hmm.
right? There are less processes to think of, but then again, if you have decided on something, the decision making is much, much faster.
Got
I'm
it.
not saying it's very slow in either case, because you have different processes through which you can actually get things done in a quicker way, in a well established setup also. But then working in a smaller company is quite a lot different than working in a place which has everything ironed out for you.
Hmm. Yeah, and like that's I mean that distinction is like good to know for someone just entering into it. And what does a product manager do on a day-to-day basis, Abhishek? Like, why? I mean, what does the job actually look like for you?
So in one line, if I can explain, it's about bringing out the most value in that product for the customer that you are building the product for.
Hmm.
So we have in every IT company, I come from an IT space, so I can give you an example for that. So in IT company, product companies, there are different specialists. Someone would be really good in design, someone is in the business team, so they interact with customers day in day out, someone is in the technology team, data science, engineering. So all these teams are very good at what they do. So as a product manager, your role is to keep the user's interest in mind, and then work with these different teams to bring out and improve the product as much
Hmm.
as you can. So what the users are, wanting in that product, or maybe something new that you want to add to it. So that is what we do. We interact with these, and then we solve the challenges which the users are facing in the product, or maybe it could be coming up with new things which can actually make the lives of our customers easier. So it's about that.
Got it. Okay. So, we've gone through your professional journey and your education journey, Abhishek. Now, I want to know about your creative, journey. Like, as you mentioned in your introduction, that you found or stumbled upon writing, rather than, like actually started doing it. And you've been writing for 10 years. And, while going through your website, I also noticed that it's not just writing in the technical sense of the word. You've written comics, you've written for podcasts. You've also created like a character called Ghanshyam that I read about in some of your Substack pieces. So there's, fiction writing, non-fiction writing, which you do really well on Substack, in your essays as well. So, like, what what is your relationship to writing? Like, why do you think you have a need to write? And where is this? Like, it's an open-ended question. Why does Abhishek write? Let's just go there. Yeah,
So I'll start off with how I started writing. So
yeah,
again, this was in BTech, somewhere I think second or third year. I'm not completely sure, but then at that point of time, I think Facebook was the social media network that everyone used, and then you put up status. That could mean like a small story, some anecdote, some funny punchline, anything. And I
yeah.
think I used to write those funny anecdotes there, and then that got me a lot of traction. So I got that validation there. So, and I think I was having fun with friends and joking around one fine day, and then there was some story that we were discussing and then laughing about it, and then one of my friends just tell me, hey, why don't you write about it? And then maybe that thing came from that I had been, I'm not sure if you can call it writing, putting up those status on Facebook. But so again, I think for some reason, I took that very seriously. Like, huh, let me try that. So I started on WordPress. I created my blog, and then there were a few things which, I always found funny and then very interesting. One is again our name Abhishek. It is, I think, one of the most common names one can find in India. So my first blog was around this. What's in a name? Then second one was around, I think, my city, from where I came from. So being a person who is from Ghaziabad in a college which is full of Delhiites, it's a very interesting thing for Delhiites, not for you, because they see you like, oh, okay, someone has come from Ghaziabad, again a city which is like not many know about it, and then again it's a very funny setup to be a part of. So I started off with that, and I could see that I had a knack for writing funny stories, or maybe giving a funny touch to anything, maybe that was even if it was something serious. So started off with this, with me just trying to see if I can write, and then people would enjoy that. And then I got the validation, felt good. I don't know why people say validation is not good. I love it. I mean, more number of likes and comments on my piece, I'm the happiest person around. So that is there, and I think from there I started writing for like an year or two. I was very regular in writing. I would initially, I think I would write almost every 3 or 4 days. In every 3 or 4 days, I would write up. But then that slowly I realized that how tough it is to write consistently. So then I think in the initial part where I was in colleges, and then I was in a corporate, I was not that regular in writing. Yes, I was writing maybe, and I was trying different things, not just funny essays. Maybe I once tried to pen down my bike ride from Dehradun till up until Chopta Tungnath, which I did in my MBA. So tried writing a travelogue. Maybe those funny blogs were always there. So that was it. And I think last year when I stumbled across Substack, that is when I seriously started thinking about writing. Hey, now let's try to write consistently. So I think at least up until 2 or 3 weeks back, I was writing every week. Now I have shifted that to fortnight, once a fortnight. So that is the frequency I am trying to keep up now. And then I think the other parts which you mentioned, the podcast and the comic. So again, they again came from friends I made in my first job. So podcast was something. It started off as, so after lunch we used to go for a short walk in that premise. So and then we used to talk about those random topics, something maybe from the news, something from maybe a bad movie which everyone was making fun of. It could be any topic. And then I think when the lockdown hit and everyone was trapped inside, so I was just talking to a friend that now that all of these podcasts are coming up, no offense to the podcast, so we were like, why don't we try something similar? And it does not have to be a very meaningful one. I mean, it could be a simple random discussion that we have. So that is where that podcast thing came up, and but it never got that popular. Plus, I think the time required to process all of it, I think it's quite a lot. So we tried, I think, creating. I think we have 5 episodes for that. So after that, we just stopped because I think no one was really interested in listening to our banter. So we stopped there. And I think similar thing happened with again another friend of mine, and she's an illustrator. So I think with her, the idea was that we were talking about again during lockdown that hey, if we could do something, if we can combine my writing with her, skills. So that is where I think so. Skelly is her character. She created that while she was studying, and then she both of us wanted to create a comic at some point of time. Since I have a big part of my reading life has been comics. So again, some opportunity. I thought that hey, let's try it out. So we tried to create a story about that skeleton, like who has died, and then again he's trying to do some random stuff in that post life world. So Skelly was her character. I used to write for that. She used to do all the illustrations and everything. So I think that was slightly, not slightly, I think way more popular than the podcast, but again not that popular that we both of us could devote time to that very religiously. And I think at some point of time we both realized that continuing that was not that fruitful. So again, another project which got shelved. Now I think both of us are so busy that I don't think any of this activity again coming back up, because I think I would want to devote most of my time to writing because I enjoy it. I mean, now that I have been doing it for such a long time, I feel that now I think words flow in a certain way. And I always write about everyday observations. I don't, think too much. So it's always about that small moment or a small thing which you might be doing day in, day out. But then I would just try to spin some story around it and then, present it. So most of the work that I now write, I think it's very relatable to at least an Indian. Not sure how people outside India would relate to it, but at least for Indians, I think that is very relatable and funny.
Yeah.
So, and plus there is always validation, so that always helps.
Like some more validation for you. I think I read your avocado piece, and yesterday or day before, I bought an avocado myself. So I felt I felt
One of
very
us.
I felt like I made it, as you said in your article. Or but the problem is now I have to wait for it to ripe. You didn't mention that in your article. Like I bought like the nice new one, and this guy sold it to me as if it's like the next fruit of heaven or something. और उसने बोला भी नहीं कि you have to wait for a couple of days. So now I'm like googling YouTube videos. How does an avocado become ripe? So I'm trying to put it near the sun, trying to put it where it'll get. So this is an entire process. इतना pressure नहीं था कभी fruit खाने के लिए. So I'm like,
Absolutely. I think that was a very anti-climax thing for me कि यार इतनी मेहनत से एक फल पे मतलब this is this is too much. One, I'm paying so much, and then again I have to again shower it with so much of love and care. Then it would ripe, and then I would enjoy it. I actually mentioned that in the article. So I also did the same thing, and I ended up spoiling the avocado
yeah,
because I think I left it out in the open for quite for more time than it was required. So don't do that mistake. Uh, Maybe eat it while it is half ripe. I don't know,
I
but
think I think we need a follow-up article. How to ensure you eat the right avocado, and I want to see a photo of you with like a avocado toast, Abhishek. That would be the ultimate achievement.
Someday, if I'm able to figure out when is that sweet spot that the avocado is ripe enough for you to eat and enjoy, I would definitely. But I think now I'm aiming for blueberries. That's the next level of evolution for anyone who wants to try up exotic fruits. So maybe
Yeah.
next article would be probably on blueberries.
Yeah, and like I think that's one of the themes that like I sort of come through in your writing on Substack. Like I've read a lot of your essays and I love Substack. Even I just, started writing on it like a couple of months ago, or maybe like a year ago. But I think what's nice about it is that it encourages long form writing. People are
Yeah.
able to write long form, and it is not only dependent like most social media platforms, it's about the last post that you put up, and
Hmm.
how many engagement, how many views you get on that post. But I feel like Substack has this nature where you can put up notes about other things you're reading, but you can also look through people's archives and really see a more deeper version of, who they are and what they want to write about as you get to know them better. And I think you really get to know people on Substack or what they like to write about, and like, what do you think is unique about Substack as a platform for you?
I think the biggest one is being able to find a community of similar folks who are also trying to write long form content, and they're willing to engage with your content as well. It's not about, hey, I've done my work. Now some random person would do the reading. So I had again a blog on WordPress, and I think the biggest thing which was missing there, or maybe I was not able to crack it, was the community part. So again, WordPress I think is the biggest platform even now when it comes to blogging, because it used to be the pioneer in that field.
Yeah.
When you used to think about blogging, only either I think that Blogger by Google
Yeah.
or Blogspot by Google, I think. And then second one was WordPress. So I started off with WordPress, but I think that community part was missing. On Substack, they already have so many writers, so many amazing writers, and then you can find, I think, a good article on almost anything. If
Hmm.
you want to learn more about product management, it is there. If you want to know about politics, it is there. If you want to know more about philosophy or any subject you can think of, it's there. And there are good enough writers who are writing real good quality stuff. There are people who are engaging with your content, so it does not feel like you are just writing in an in a blank space. There
Hmm.
are people to interact with you, ask you questions, say, I don't think this is good, or maybe this is really good. How did you come up with this? And then so on and so. So again, all that, again, that validation and all those discussions around what you have created, that really helps you to be motivated enough to write again and again. So I think that I feel Substack has been able to crack, and it's really good to see some platform where you can actually write long form content, and actually
Hmm.
people prefer that over those notes, which are essentially in some ways tweets.
And I think like adding on to what you said, I think like the email aspect of it is also quite useful, that you're connecting it to someone's email inbox, which I think people have a tendency to check quite regularly. Now the problem is I have too many Substacks in my email ID, और मुझे
Yeah,
Substack ही email आ रहा है, कुछ और email आ नहीं रहा है. And earlier I think I used to get a lot of insurance emails or like some scheme. I feel like
yeah.
the last time I got an email from a real person has been like 5 to 6 years. I think I'm getting only companies, Substack.
Actually, yes. Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Yeah. Apart
Yeah,
from, like, if it is a personal email, I don't think most of us are interacting with anyone. Uh,
true.
wow, learn something new.
I think we converted email into a commodity too. Like
Yeah, absolutely.
now when a human being sends me an email, I'm like, wow, ये कुछ नया हो गया आज. Like it's
क्या करना होता है? What's the next step?
yeah, and but I feel like, sometimes I'm also worried, because when you put everything on a particular platform, for instance, this happened with Medium, right? A lot of people used to write on Medium, and then now Medium is like not as popular. So sometimes I also think like, is this something that I want to? And a lot of my friends who used to write quite actively on Substack, they've moved on to actually going back to a blog, and hosting their writing on their own platform rather than and using Substack and other social media. So sometimes I think about that, like, do you completely stay dependent on a medium? And like even with Substack, like the nature of the medium is also changing, with them introducing reels and trying to, become the entire social media experience themselves. So that's just something. But coming back to your story, just to respect time, the last few questions that I had, Abhishek, one was your passion for travel and biking. Like, is that something that maybe you can tell us more about, like places you've traveled to and what you've learned from these travels?
Yeah, so I think so far there has been only one biking adventure, which I mentioned was from Dehradun up until Chopta Tungnath in Uttarakhand. So I think that was the only trip that I took on a bike. So that was again like for the first time I was with just one of my friend, both of us, traveling across the state on mountainous roads, enjoying the scenery. And I think the best part about riding a bike is that you get to enjoy the scenery in a much more immersive way compared to when you are in, let's say, a car.
Hmm.
So you could stop anywhere, enjoy the view, take halts, and then go towards your destination. So I think that was, I think, one of the most fun trip that I've had so far. Then I think in my MBA we got a chance to go to Europe for a month for immersion program. So all of us were there for a month, and
Hmm.
then if anyone has a Schengen visa, I don't know if this is the correct pronunciation, Schengen, I don't know. So if you are there with this visa for a month, I think there's no chance that you're just staying in one place. So
Right.
we were able to explore the nearby countries. So we were in Slovenia for a month for a course, and then we used to have weekends free, and every weekend we used to just hop on to some other country which was just nearby.
Hmm.
So that was again like a very different experience because at least me, I was experiencing different cultures outside of India for the first time. So how what's the food culture there, how people interact. So I think one thing which has always stayed with me is how people are so much more into physical activities in Europe compared to India, because they would always be on some adventure every weekend.
Right.
Like the cities there are much more walkable
Yeah.
compared to what we have here. So that is again a big difference. And I think it's hard to see, at least for me, in that time, it was very hard to see someone who was not fit,
Hmm.
because people would walk so much, they would, be more outside than, stay at home and then
Yeah.
just eat up and then sleep, which I do at least. So that was a big welcome change, I think. Though I have not been able to learn so much from there, I still spend a lot of time indoors. I'm a very in that sense. I think I don't go outdoors much, but
Hmm.
for travel, I think this was a big change. Then I think after that, also explored Thailand. Uh, that was, I think, after we completed MBA. So
Yeah.
again, three of my friends, we went there for a week and then enjoyed the time, came back. And I think after that, the real travel as such, I think, was able to do when I was in Pune. So it was just me and my wife, and then both of us would try to travel together. But then she was pursuing her MS, so she did not have that much of free time, and so I had used that opportunity to travel around Pune. So I think I've been to most of the places, explored Western Ghats for the first time. Beautiful place, I think. Up in the north, we have lots and lots of plain areas. For us to explore hills, I think we have to travel up to either Uttarakhand or Himachal. But then if you are somewhere in the south, I think you have much easier access to mountains, and then the beautiful scenery that is there. So have traveled quite a bit now. I won't call myself as someone who travels very passionately. I think whenever I would get time, I would go and explore some place, but it's not something which I am very consciously trying to devote time to. But yeah, I think traveling anyways is always fun.
Got it. Like, and Abhishek, we just have like one more question. Can we go like 5 minutes about time? Is that okay, Abhishek? Do you
Yeah,
have?
sure.
Okay, so, like, for the last question, Abhishek, I just wanted to ask you. I was listening to your podcast. I was listening to the Indian Millennial Music episode, and I noticed that I don't know if one of the characters you were enacting, were you one of the, were you Jugal or Kishore? Basically, that's what I was trying to ask.
Uh, this, I think even we had not decided. We would always introduce that, hey, I am not Jugal, he is not Kushore, and then we would just go about that. We never, confirmed that who was who, but
Okay, so like no reveal, but I'm just thinking about language, right? In India, we speak so many different languages, and I,
yeah,
for instance, have a different personality in Hindi, a different personality in English, and a different personality in Tulu, which is another language I speak. So
yeah.
in your head, like I feel like you're very fluent in Hindi and English, like and any other, like I wanted to know, do you feel like you think differently in different languages, and which one are you most comfortable in expressing your thoughts in?
That's a really good observation, and you're exactly on point. I mean, with different languages, your whole personality changes.
Yeah.
Um, this is kind of contradictory, at least in my case, because I express in a better way in Hindi because that is what my mother tongue is. But 99% of my writing has been English, which is again something I never really thought of. कि Why is it that way? And in the beginning, I think I used to have a lot of challenges. There were lots of grammatical errors. I wanted to convey something. It did not come out in the exact same way. But then I think along the way, I kind of improved. But I think the reason I chose English in that sense was because the reach was better. And I thought maybe if I write in Hindi, not many would be able to relate and then maybe, read my stuff. I
Mm.
think choosing English was then, and I think for me at least, I think in Hindi. Even when I'm writing, I would think in Hindi and then I would translate and then write it down. So this is to this date, this is what the process has been. I am not yet comfortable in thinking in English and then writing it then and there. There's always some translation which is going on in the mind, and then that comes out.
Wonderful. Like, so on that note, we come to an end of this episode of Learning Stories. For the listeners tuning in, I really enjoy reading Abhishek's blog on Substack, and I will be linking that in the show notes. And until next time, keep learning. And Abhishek, thank you again for making time for this. Any last thoughts in case this is the last interview you do on this planet? So I'm joking. I'm sure we'll do this again, but like any other way people can reach out to you on the internet apart from the blog?
I would prefer that way. If it is via blog, I think always happy to have a human, sending me an email and then me interacting with them over an email, like we discussed. This is such a rare thing now. Uh, Pigeons always work. I mean, if you can send across a pigeon with a scroll, I think that works too. I'll link in my Abhishek. You had to laugh. This was a joke.
Sorry, sorry. For a moment I thought Pigeon was a new social media platform. I don't know because
I
Twitter and everything. What is Twitter? So I didn't get that. Sorry.
Oh wow, didn't think on that tangent. Okay,
Yeah.
okay, but still,
No, I feel like sometimes some new social media platform will get invented. मुझे पता नहीं है Pigeon होगा कोई नाम so.
नहीं यार, that's again a possibility.
Yeah.
Very possible कि कोई नया कोई तो आप लोगों ने मतलब नई कोई चिड़िया पकड़ के उसके ऊपर बना दिया.
But if it becomes a company, मुझे 10% stake तो मिलना चाहिए. जो भी पता नहीं, 20 years from now, Pigeon, I want to be like founding podcast member. जो भी
So
है.
I think no, I think we have been able to discuss quite a bit. So I think that was really fun talking to you, and thank you so much for having me. And I think yeah, but I would love it if someone reaches out and says that they enjoyed my writing. I mean, there's no bigger compliment than this. So thank you so much for going through all of my stuff and then finding it enjoyable. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Perfect. Thanks, Abhishek, and until next time, keep learning.